that you will all have a nugget that you can take away from this. So we are blessed to have with us today Michael Mays.
Thanks for having me. And as I was preparing, I was feeling pretty good and pretty confident. And I'm thinking, oh, I've got some really good ideas, some deep ideas here. And then my roommate graciously shared with me shit New Age girls say on YouTube. And I was like, all of a sudden less confident because they included things like, I love Deepak Chopra and things like Eckhart Tolle. So I'll try not to go into too many New Age cliches, but just to start out with one, is anyone else extremely happy that 2012 is finally here?
Yes, finally!
I feel like so much of what I spoke to people about, what people told me, clients, friends, colleagues, acquaintances, was a sense that in 2011 people had more emotional energy, more spiritual energy, more mental energy than they had physical energy. And so it's almost like our spiritual bodies were vibrating too fast for our physical bodies. And it was causing a sense of feeling a little bit disconnected, of feeling a little stuck, and of feeling physically very exhausted. And it was almost as if at an internal level people were sensing this tremendous amount of change that was coming, but then looking around their own lives and looking around the world, looking around the planet and saying, well, I don't really see that change. And as I spoke to people that I respect, people that come from a spiritual point of view, the consensus from them was that, 2011 had been this time of preparation, this time of us getting ready for where we are going on the planet next. And yet, I feel that spiritually we know that waiting for tomorrow, that suspending our contentment today, that filing happiness away under to be achieved later is not valid. And so I'd like us to examine why 2012 has come to represent such a unique moment for us spiritually in our own lives and in the lives of the planet. And so much has been written about 2012, so much has been in media about 2012, from doomsday scenarios to apocalyptic predictions to people who really feel that this is the death of a way of thinking and initiation into a new era, and people debate whether it's a year or whether it's an age, whether it is indeed an era. And there are people who so much more comprehensively than I could talk to you about what's going on astrologically or what's going on with our solar activity, or why it seems that as a planet we have reached critical mass both environmentally and geopolitically. But metaphysically, 2012 represents a coming together of the principle of reflection and the principle of action. So these cease to be separate things. What does this mean? It means that time itself seems to speed up. It means that we are entering an era in our own lives in which we become so comfortable listening to our intuition, listening to our highest good, that we are able to so rapidly look at a situation, examine that situation, and then determine the course of action that is best for our highest good. And then in determining that, we will have done what is best for others' highest good. And the fact that 2012 has come to represent such a unique moment in the history of our planet is fascinating to me, because time itself is an engineered concept. It's not an objective concept. It's relative. It's something that we have created in our own hearts and minds. And because spiritually we know that the content of our thoughts and emotions has everything to do with what then happens in our lives. So our thoughts and emotions, the content of our thoughts and emotions about 2012 has everything to do with then what 2012 actually is. And so I got to thinking about, what if by some incredible act of fiat we could erase everybody's thoughts about 2012. We could make everybody on the planet think that 2012 represented nothing of any environmental, political, spiritual, or social consequence. Would that then be the case? And I think given what we know about the power of collective intention, it is true. But alternately, if all of us in our own lives and then all of us in our spiritual communities reflect on 2012, hold in our thoughts and minds the the idea that this does indeed represent a leap forward, a jump forward, a way in which we can do business better on this planet, will that then be the case? And I think the answer to that, given what we know about collective intention, is yes. So we've arrived at 2012 not so much because of an ancient calendar. We've arrived at 2012 and everything that it means because at the same time that we have reached critical mass on our planet, we have reached critical mass in our own hearts and minds. Which is to say that most of us in our own lives realize that the old way of doing things is no longer working. That at a metaphysical level, at the level of deep spiritual thought, at the level of pause, that we have to do something differently if we are to get more contentment, more satisfaction, more fulfillment, more joy out of our daily lives. And I don't think it is at all a coincidence that we approach this place in our own hearts and minds at the same moment when, environmentally and in terms of resource shortages, we approach a very serious time in the life of our planet. And then keeping in mind with the spiritual principle, which I think that most of us by this point have matured to, which is the principle that everything we go through in our life, everything we endure, both good and bad, we have attracted, created, designed in some way so that we may uncover deeper dimensions of our own soul, so that we may learn something, so that we may better be able to understand the world around us. But the same is true on a global level. Those experiences which we go through as a collective, which we go through as humanity writ large, are also created so that we might both discover new dimensions of our own soul and new dimensions of the soul of humanity. So we come to think of 2012 as a perfectly designed collective learning experience. And if we think of 2012 as a perfectly designed collective learning experience, as a moment in time in which we are able to gain incredible insight, and a moment in time, for whatever reason, it seems that we are uniquely positioned to become consciously aware of why we are going through everything that we are going through in our life. I think the question logically arises, how can I as an individual be the most prepared to engage that experience? And then how can we as a world be the most prepared to engage that experience? I mean, if you think about a college class, you often get the most out of the classes that you've prepared for when you've read the chapter, when you've outlined the articles, when you show up ready to critically engage that experience. Well, the same thing is true here. What are the things that we can do? What are the ways that we can subtly adjust our own being so that we might finally take advantage of this opportunity? Because it's hardly the first opportunity in the life of a planet in which we were able to make change, or which we were able to leap forward. And so it was with this principle in mind that I came up with what I want to talk to you about today, which is conscious spirituality. I think the word conscious is the empowerment here, because free will does not lie in whether or not you engage. By virtue of having a human experience, you will engage with those around you. But whether you are active in that engagement, whether you infuse your thoughts, your actions, your consciousness with intention, that is where free will lies. And when you are willing to infuse your actions, your thoughts, that which you hold in your own heart with intention, you will find that you experience more joy. You will find that you have more contentment. So free will lies in the choice between being active, being awake, or meandering through your life in a kind of sleep-like daze. And one is not better than the other in the sense that, one will lead you to heaven and one will prevent you from ending up, in eternal damnation. One is better than the other because of the satisfaction that it grants you on a daily basis, and because beyond just the existential benefit of doing so, it literally begins to change the fabric of your life, so that as if by magic, every situation you find yourself confronted with begins to transform. So that you then start to attract and hold the relationship that is right for you, the career that is right for you, the requisite amount of health that helps you go after your highest good. So as we think about being very conscious, I think the first way that we have to begin to subtly adjust our thinking if we are to truly engage with the experience of 2012 is to reflect upon this principle. And that is that self-interested endeavors are divine ventures. Self-interested endeavors are divine ventures. What does this mean? It means that when you are willing to be honest with yourself about what you want, regardless of what anybody else wants, regardless of what your spouse might want or your family might want, when you are honest with yourself about what you truly want, when you listen to your soul about what is best for your highest good, that is the spiritual way of doing business. How do you do this? Number one, you have an honest conversation with yourself about what it is you do want. I think sometimes we have such a hard time doing this because we keep it at such a distance, or we let ourselves want only a little bit of it. Then you have an honest conversation with yourself about why you want this. Is this something that's really best for my highest good? Or is this something that is feeding the wrong dragon? Right? Is this something that is feeding my ego self, or is it something that I really need? And then it means that you're willing to suspend your fear and actually go after that. It means that you actually take the practical actions in the world that would bring whatever thing it is that you desire toward you. I think that we need to get very serious about rethinking the word selfish and some of the connotations that we have with this. It's like we have this mistaken belief that if I do something for myself that I desire, that I withheld from another. That is simply not the case. Think about it from a practical standpoint. If you are constantly self-sacrificing because you believe that it will make other people happy, how do you show up in your interactions with other people? You don't show up illumined. You don't show up empowered. You show up frustrated and bitter. You show up out of energy. You know how many clients I have that are healthcare workers or social workers or law enforcement officers that call me when they hit 45 and say, I simply have to do something else. I've exhausted myself for the last 20 years. I never took 5 minutes to think about what I want. I have absolutely no energy left. And yet, if these people would have taken 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day to ask what they really want, they then would have went to their interactions with their clients having more to give, being more gentle, being less frustrated. The same is true with you. I recently had a situation in my life where I had something very good come in, and I was a little stunned by some of the judgments from other people. But I listened to myself, and I was so assured that it was the right decision, that I was willing to do what was selfish. But in doing so, I then showed up to these interactions with all these people who were judging me and criticizing me, so much more willing to really see them, so much more willing to engage them, so much more patient, which is not something that I'm normally particularly good at. So I think we have so many internalized thoughts from childhood about being selfish and what withholding means. And it's more than a question of simple demeanor. If as a culture, if as a society, if as a world, we accept that self-sacrifice is normal, that suffering is inevitable, that self-effacing humility is somehow divine, or is somehow what God wants, I think the consequences are stunning, because what then happens is we become so willing to tolerate needless suffering. We become so inoculated from what is actually happening on our planet. So then we see homelessness or we see poverty, and we have practiced on ourselves the idea that there is not enough. We have practiced on ourselves the idea that we have to deny ourselves something for others, that it does not bother us when we then see hardship in our world. And I think it's not that you consciously ask somebody, oh, do you care about homelessness? And they go, no, because I practice self-denial on myself. No. But it's that on a deep psychic level, this enters into the collective unconscious. It enters into the very fabric of our universe. So everything that happens on our planet, good or bad, is a reflection of that which is in our own minds. Right? So like, we're breeding our own life to spend too much